in most of the United States. And I'm just going to remind everybody right off the bat to mute yourselves. Uh, and and up in the top right corner of your video, there should be a button that says mute. If you wouldn't mind keeping yourself muted, that would be great. So first of all, I'm wondering if you are a new person, can you raise your hand or do a dance? I don't see any new people tonight. It's there. We have a lot of people who are not showing themselves. Oh, we do. Tina, how do you say your last name, Tina? Oh, and Troy and David. Yes, you are new. But I'm going to introduce you later. Tina
Justice is the last name. Hello.
Justice. Oh, what a great last name. You are
Thanks.
already, you're in. You're in. Perfect last name for Dining for Women. Well, we are a community dedicated to the collective action for global gender equality, and we're so glad you're here. Tonight is our national virtual chapter meeting. We have these once a month on the first Thursday night of the month at 8 o'clock Eastern. So what we will do tonight is we will have a presentation. We'll do the dinner affirmation. I will introduce our speakers. We will show the video, and then we'll have some time for question and answer. And we will also give a brief overview of our sustained grant. And Wendy, your email is showing. Saying your something showing that you don't want to show. I guess that's the Zoom version of having a like a bra strap show or something. So tonight also, please introduce yourselves in the chat. The chat is the speaker button. Speaker bubble button. And also, I just want to remind you about the gallery view and the speaker view. I can't see how many people we have tonight, but it's a couple screens for me. It might be easier for you to do the speaker view so that you can find who's talking. Okay, what I'm going to do next is introduce Wendy. Wendy, can you wave? Wendy Fradalin is our communication and membership director, and she will be monitoring the chat for questions. And so please, as you hear the presentation, please ask questions. So I would like to ask Elaine to read the dinner affirmation for this evening.
Okay. As we share food, we share something of ourselves and we honor each other. We recognize the powerful associations of women to food, life, and nurture in all cultures. We honor the importance of those. We also recognize the burdens they can bring. We remember the women about whom we've learned, the ones they strive to nurture, and the organizations that are trying to nurture them. By eating together, we remember and honor those women who also have favorite foods and family recipes. And we express the hope that through our efforts, they may find more sustenance for their lives. May we all be able to feast together someday.
Thank you, Elaine. Hear, hear. I hope that we can all meet together again and share a meal sometime in the near future. So it's very exciting tonight. We're headed to Bangladesh for the wonderful organization Speak Up for the Poor, and we have two speakers tonight. Troy Anderson is the founder and international director of Speak Up for the Poor. He's a graduate of the UCLA School of Law and has devoted his life to the defense, education, and empowerment of at-risk girls. For the past 9 years, Troy has lived and worked in Bangladesh, developing and overseeing Speak Up for the Poor's girls' education program. And we also have Dave Palmer, who is the Associate Development Director for Speak Up for the Poor. He previously lived in India and Bangladesh for 7 years, working in community development roles, and is grateful to remain connected to the Bangladeshi people through his work with Speak Up. We will now share the video for you, and then we will have questions and answers. So get your typewriters. Honestly, you would think I'm much older than I am. Get your keyboards ready to type your questions in the chat.
The abuse and exploitation of girls in poverty is the greatest human rights issue in the world today. Child marriage is the most widespread destructive form of that abuse. Every day, more than 25,000 girls around the world are forced into illegal child marriages, one every 3 or 4 seconds. Girls in child marriages are forced to drop out of school, are forced to give up their dreams and hopes for life, and in many cases are reduced to being servants to their in-laws, existing only to have babies and please their husband. Child marriage causes endless problems and sufferings for young girls. In Bangladesh, where we work, nearly 65% of the girls in a country of 165 million people are married early. Hundreds of thousands of new child brides every year. This leads to greater instances of physical and sexual abuse, leads to many health problems, including girls dying in childbirth, results in malnourished babies who die early, and can even be a gateway to human trafficking and forced prostitution. Child marriage destroys lives. Child marriage flows directly from the foolish beliefs that women are less than men, that girls have no potential or future or purpose. But with your help, we will stop this abuse. In Bangladesh today, our girls' education program works with 1,500 girls and young women in 30 villages, helping them to stay in school, giving them the tools they need to build a bright future. In a country of more than 30,000 villages, this can feel like a small step. But Speak Up exists to create a new reality for girls in poverty. And in the 30 villages where we work, this new reality is showing hopeful signs. Entire villages are beginning to end child marriages as families see better options for their daughters. We now have more than 125 young women in college or nursing school, the first of a wave of young women who will avoid child marriage and instead build careers. With the help of Dining for Women, we will provide health and safety training for 1,500 girls in our GEP and hundreds more girls, enabling an entire generation of girls to rise above poverty and thrive. Village life can be tough for girls in poverty, and there are many health and safety challenges. Very poor families often lack access to clean water, and living in very crowded villages in close proximity to livestock can cause many health problems. Inadequate sanitation and waste systems contribute to disease, and girls are often uneducated about basic hygiene issues, including not having access to feminine products. Our health and safety training meetings will meet this need, giving girls the tools they need to live healthier lives. Particularly in the age of COVID, simple health topics ranging from hand washing to clean water to menstrual health will help our friends live better lives. We also regularly teach girls on important issues of safety, helping them know their rights, what to do to stay safe from abuse, and what to do when things go wrong. With Dining for Women funding in 2021, the Girls Education Program will hold at least 36 large, grade-specific trainings for girls in Bangladesh, fostering a new understanding of these important issues.
আমার স্বপ্ন ডাক্তার। আমি নবম শ্রেণী পড়ি, আমার স্বপ্ন পুলিশ অফিসার। আমি কেরাতে এইটি পড়ি, তাও পুলিশ অফিসার চাই। আমি ক্লাস 11-এ পড়ি, আমার স্বপ্ন নার্স।
আমি ক্লাস 7-এ পড়ি, আমার স্বপ্ন টিচার।
আমি ক্লাস 12-এ পড়ি, আমার স্বপ্ন টিচার। আমি ক্লাস 7-এ পড়ি, আমার স্বপ্ন পুলিশ অফিসার।
আমি ক্লাস 11-এ পড়ি, আমার স্বপ্ন টিচার।
So how do you stop child marriage? The first step is to empower and educate girls. Our young friends in Bangladesh are hungry to build better lives. They have seen their friends and neighbors get married early. They know better than anyone the destructive effects of child marriage, and they know what they want instead: an education, tools to help them reach their dreams, an opportunity for something better. So when girls from poor families are given the tools they need, training and tutoring, school supplies and uniforms, a safe dormitory to live for college, a supportive team of social workers and counselors, they flourish. Many things need to happen to change the world for girls in poverty, but the simplest and first step is to empower girls themselves. This is why Speak Up is thrilled to receive funding from Dining for Women to allow us to continue empowering our young friends.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Thank you, Dining for Women.
Wonderful. Thank you. So as soon as we stop sharing the screen so we can see everybody, we would love to see the questions that people have posted. Or if we don't have any questions, we do have a few questions. So Wendy, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Well, actually, Troy and David are going to speak for a while, and then we'll get to questions.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Are you there, Troy? Can you unmute? Are you connected?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, sorry, my connection's been in and out. I think it's having a tough time handling the Zoom load, but so our presentation might be a little bit choppy, but between Dave and I will handle all your questions and share about our work. So should I go ahead and share a bit, Wendy?
Yes, you go right ahead. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, and sorry if we're a little bit choppy, but we're
We
doing
did
my
mention
best.
that you're calling and you're joining us from Bangladesh, didn't we?
Yeah,
Did we say that, everyone?
Yeah, it's Friday morning, 7:15 in the morning here, and I'm in my room, and yeah, so it's great with you all, and it's an honor for Dave and I your meeting and work in partnership, and we're dealing and anyone offline right now, but I'm
Troy, you are breaking up and you've frozen now. You may want to just turn off your video and see if that works better, or else we'll have to turn it over to David.
I was thinking the same thing, that maybe he could stop his video and that might help.
I think he's trying that.
Okay.
Would it help if we stop our videos? If of all the people who are watching, if we stopped our videos, would that help?
I don't know for sure. If you'd like to try it.
Okay.
Yeah. See if Troy comes back. Maybe we can just give Troy a moment to see if he can connect back on, and if not, I'll go ahead and do some sharing. Sorry for the pause here, everybody.
That is absolutely understandable.
Yeah.
It's still pretty amazing that we can even connect with each other from so far away. So
yeah, oftentimes, I mean, we've done a lot of Zoom calls from Bangladesh, and it usually connects fine, but they do have a little bit more difficulty with the connection there sometimes. Yeah.
So it doesn't work as well as typewriters, but it's here.
Yeah. Well, maybe just until Troy comes, maybe I'll just share a few things. And if Troy gets back on, we can turn it back over to him.
Sounds great.
As the video indicates, child marriage is the significant problem affecting girls and young women in Bangladesh that Speak Up is trying to address. There's actually a proverb or a saying in the Bengali language. Oh, here's Troy. Troy's just making a comeback. Can you hear me, Troy? You want to try again?
Yeah, I'm here again, and
Okay.
yeah. So I'll give it a shot while I'm here. So I was going to start in saying that I've been looking the last couple of months over some of your materials and website, and one of the things that struck me is that you, as an organization broadly, are about solutions and not just bemoaning the fact that terrible things are happening, but wanting to make a difference. And that's a great encouragement, because that's how I think, and Dave thinks, and our organization thinks, that we want to not just feel bad about difficult things, but help to do something to help solve problems. But the greatest realization we've had as an organization is that we aren't the solution, but that girls in poverty, many difficult circumstances, they themselves, in many cases, are the solution to the issues that they're facing in their environments. So in a country like Bangladesh that needs many new nurses and teachers and doctors, especially female teachers, that the girls themselves are what this country needs. So we're greatly encouraged to join you as a group of people that wants to help solve problems by empowering and educating and defending girls in poverty. So I'm hoping that you can hear me. I think I'm coming in and out, but I'm going to tell you just a few stories about one village in particular. We are working in 30 villages in rural Bangladesh and a few slum areas in the city of Khulna. But the one village I'll describe represents perhaps 30 or 40,000 villages in Bangladesh, and hundreds of thousands of villages like it in South Asia and around the world. So in the village of Kashipur a few years ago, the first 13-year-old girl that I knew here got married. So this very tiny young girl is probably about 4'11", probably weighed about 40 kilos. She was 13 years old, and the son of the village leader took interest in her and communicated that to his father, and over time essentially forced the girl, her name is Shakti, forced Shakti's father to give her in marriage to this young man. And it really broke my heart. It was the first time that I had seen a girl so tiny and so young get married, and that seemed like there was very little we could do about it, because even though child marriage is illegal in Bangladesh for girls under 18, it's very rare for the authorities or the police or the judicial system to do anything about it. So we were unable at that point to do anything. And even now, when I go visit Kashipur, I see Shakti, who has a young son. She seems to be doing okay. She's 19 years old now, but her education and her development in life was thwarted because at age 13, she was illegally forced to be married. Ugh. And in Kashipur, since that time, we've had great progress. We now have 100 girls in Kashipur involved in our GEP. And one of the highlights there was a few years ago when we brought the police and some local officials who were on our side to kind of have a show of force and a public display showing that in Kashipur, child marriage was not only illegal, but that we would try to enforce the law. So we had this big meeting, a bunch of police showed up with their shotguns, and when the military and police show up, now the dads will finally come to a meeting. Many times they say, oh, those are girls' issues, I don't want to get involved. But the police were there, some elected officials, and they made a strong showing to the whole community saying, we will stop child marriages here. And it's not only illegal, but it's not in the best interest of your daughter. So of course, it doesn't take just one meeting. It takes many years to change history. But some of the fathers were very impacted. But one girl in particular, Ashtame, who's 21 years old now, she was 14 at the time, and she said that she. But even though we had this great show of force, her father came to her not long after the meeting and said, Ashtame, you're going to be married. And what happens, she's Hindu, what happens very commonly here is that girl might be married even a week or 10 days later after she first hears about it to a man that she doesn't know. So very common. The dad said, here's the man you're going to marry. Is unusual. He brought the guy, said, you're going to marry this guy in about 10 days. I've got it all set up. Talk to your mom and get ready to be married. And unusual for Bangladesh, this little 14-year-old girl looked at her father. I wasn't there, but the whole village gathered around. They told me the story. She looked at her father and said, "Dad, no, I'm going to be a teacher. You can't make me get married." This is quite a radical step for very conservative Bangladesh and very rural, very poor communities, where she faced down her father and said, "No, I'm going to be a teacher." And they told me that the whole village increasingly started gathering around, listening to Ashtame debate with her father. And she said, "No, I have Uncle Troy behind me." They call me Troy Uncle here. "And I have this organization behind me, and the police and the cops all are together saying, you cannot make me get married. And I want to be a teacher." So a little bit after that, she moved into our dormitory. We have a dormitory here in Khulna, in the city where we are, because that gives girls who are at risk a safe place to live. So she came and lived in our dorm for a few years during high school as she was preparing to be a teacher. But it's a great example of, in the same village, where even now, even though the police and the authorities have told us that they would stop child marriages, we're still fighting that battle there. But there are many different results based on which girls can have great support and empowerment behind them. Unfortunately for Shati, we were unable at that time. We were just learning how to handle those situations. We weren't able to help her. But for Ashtame, we were able to empower her, where she herself was able to say, "I'm not going to get married, and I want to go to school." She did get married eventually at age 19. She didn't quite reach her dream, but at least in her case, she wasn't forced to be married so young. And the difference between 14 and 19 for a young girl is a massive difference, especially from very poor communities where there's very little education. There's very little even sex education or preparation for marriage. So her life was definitely changed by that delay of time. So what we're doing in Bangladesh is trying to replicate that villages now, but one day in hundreds and hundreds of villages, we hope, and maybe in the future in India, Nepal, Pakistan, across this region, that we will empower thousands and thousands of young girls to not be forced into illegal child marriage or other situations where they're being exploited, but that they'll have a path to reach their dreams. So we go to villages, we support girls to stay in public schools. So we ourselves are not running schools, but we are supporting the public school system, but giving girls what they need to stay in school through university. So one of the distinctives about Speak Up is that we are not only working with children, but currently we have 110 young women who are after high school that are still involved in our program, receiving a monthly stipend. So some of them live in our dorm, some of them live in other dorms around the city, and some of them live in dormitories in other cities in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, in Borishal, in Rajshahi, other big cities where they're going to nursing school and university. And we're giving them stipends so that they can continue all the way to reach their dream. Am I still online?
You are, Troy.
Yes.
Yes.
Still good? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
You're
good.
doing great.
Okay. So the main thing that Bangladesh is on, it's a tremendous girls, which is many girls into child marriage. And you saw from the video, perhaps a year across the country, we're fighting that great injustice, but simultaneously empowering young women that they themselves can be the solution to what this working now. Some of them, the nursing students, are even part of our health and safety training, which your funding is going to go to, and I'll explain in a minute. And that's kind of creating this virtuous cycle where we're helping defend the poorest girls, but on the other end, having young women that are empowered to be the solution that their country and their village and their family needs. So let me describe exactly what the funding from Dining for Women will provide as part of the project we're doing. So we work in these 30 villages, working with girls from grade 6 all the way through university, keeping them in school, fighting against child marriage, but more importantly, preparing them for the future. But what we do every month in each of these villages is have 2 big training meetings. One training meeting is for the girls and young women, and one is for the parents, which ends up being 99% the moms. But the girls' training meetings this year will be funded completely by the Dining for Women grant. And that is going to provide in every village 11 times this year, 11 months from January, through November, training on different health and safety topics. Our intention before COVID was to have those in large meetings where every 8th grader from 30 villages would come together. But because of COVID, we're unable to have large meetings like that until the government gives us permission. So instead, we're breaking that into village by village. So the funding is going to go to 11 times 29. That's something like 329 different village level meetings that will be from 10 up to 100 girls and young women receiving training and information and empowerment about different health and safety issues. So those issues are going to be everything from training about legal issues. What is the law about child marriage? What is the law about sexual abuse? What is the law about marriage and your rights as a young woman when you get married? Some legal issues, some teaching about basic sanitation and water hygiene, which is important in Bangladesh, issues of personal hygiene and feminine health issues, which, obviously women would know about those issues, but it's a tremendous struggle for girls in Bangladesh in poverty, issues of healthy eating and diet and exercise, and some other issues about safety, how to have safe relationships with men, sexual harassment, and other things like that. So we're going to have a spectrum of health and safety issues that we're dealing with, and all of these issues will be funded by the Dining for Women grant. One of the coolest pieces of this is that we're going to have some of the young women who have just recently finished nursing school through our program go back to their villages and present the health topics. This is cool on many, many levels. One is that the stipends we give, or the honorariums, will go to these young women who are making very small salary as junior nurses. It will also encourage them to have a voice in the villages that they come from. And it also will show the families and the young girls, this is what you could do one day in the future. So in these villages, everything is quite public, and we can say to the dad, look at this young woman, Shipra, who 6 years ago, she was like a little 8th grader sitting there. Now she's finishing up nursing school and presenting to 300 people in the village. Your daughter could be able to do the same thing, even support herself financially as a nurse one day. So with the training will be provided. It's a regular part of our girls education program, but this year we're taking it up a step with providing different materials, having more speakers come in, funding our young women to do the training. But that's the piece that the Dining for Women grant will cover. The way that this fights against child marriage is it's part of our comprehensive package of things that are designed to empower and educate and give girls confidence that they can reach their goal and they can do something other than child marriage. Because in villages like Kashipur that I described, the girls, if they don't have some kind of outside intervention, know that what they're destined for is child marriage, because it's what they've seen their mother and their grandmother and every auntie and every young woman in the village do before them, is drop out of school when they're 13, 15, 16 and get married soon after. So the most potent thing that we think you can do is not just bring in the police, although that's important, not just work with that's important, but to work family level and with individual girls themselves.
Sounds like Troy might be breaking up or freezing again. We can't hear you anymore, Troy. Okay.
David, would it be okay while he tries to reconnect if maybe I ask a couple of questions that
would be great, but I think Troy might be back already. Are you back?
Oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah.
He's fast.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm here. Sorry. I was just the brief story I was going to say, and then we can do questions for sure, was we used to, when we started, ask girls this simple question, what is your dream, or what do you want to be in life? Which is very common in the West, right? Since you were a kid, in most cases, maybe your parents or relatives ask you, right? But I would ask girls this and they would look at me with a blank stare. And I used to think it was because they didn't understand my Bangla, right? My Bangla wasn't very clear. But my friends would say, no, your Bangla is not very good, but they understand the idea or the words, but the idea sense, because villages have never been encouraged to think about it. And I thought, what that is. So now every girl in our 1,500 officially in our program, And we have hundreds of others on the waiting list who come and use our little schoolrooms that we've set up. And all of them now are saying, I want to be a nurse, a teacher, a doctor. Of course, it's not so easy and we have to build the steps to get there, but it's great to help young girls dream for what their future could be.
And then I think he froze again, but that was his last little story. If you didn't hear it because Troy was breaking up, what Troy was saying was that they understood the words that he was speaking, but the concept, the idea of having a dream of what you could possibly be in the future was foreign to these girls in the rural villages. Yeah.
That leads me to one of the questions that can't come up. We love that, you know, the pictures of the girls with, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a doctor. And several of the girls said that they wanted to be police officers. And one of our attendees is asking, you know, is that because they would like to be able to enforce the law about early marriage, or, you know, where does that come from?
Yeah. Hopefully I'll stay on as long as I can. Dave can pick up because he knows these things well. But basically, I mean, at one level, girls can dream for things that they can imagine and see. And so what they've commonly seen are either doctors, nurses, teachers, or police officers. So even though, I mean, there is a certain percentage of the police force that's specifically reserved for women here. So they've got some gender, I mean, it's complicated, but some gender equality things that they're trying to do. So at every police checkpoint, there's at least one female officer to inspect or check women who are going through the checkpoint. So they've seen police officers. I think that they sense it's a position of power that probably appeals to them at some level. They have to meet a minimum height and weight requirements. So some of the very, very tiny girls want to be police officers. And we say, well, you're 16 and you're like 5 foot and that's awesome, but you won't qualify. So we have to gear them, direct them a different way. But the young women who can qualify, it's a great career if they can get into the officer track, to not just be a beat cop, but to be an officer, which would require being a university. But I think it's because that's what they've seen. And some of them do want to enforce the law. As little as they understand about the law, even that want to be them say they want to fight against child or the illegal dowry system or domestic violence or gender-based violence. They want to do something about these issues. So the girls that are drawn to justice careers typically have something like
That certainly makes perfect sense, that they would aspire to be what they see in their immediate world. And I'm kind of jumping around with the questions, but I'm trying to keep some themes together. And someone was asking, what about the boys? Are they routinely asked what they would like to do in adulthood? And is it easier for them to answer that question?
Yeah, I know 100 times more girls than boys because of the nature of our program. So I don't interact with many boys. I mean, generally, people say, what about the boys? Even girls that we've removed from the brothels, they say, what about the boys? They need to be removed too. And I say, yeah, it's terrible for anyone in some poverty situations, but for the girls, it's a step lower because they're going to be abused for their bodies. So yeah, boys have many struggles. They, if I were to ask many boys, some of them would say typical boy-like things. I want to be a cricket star. That's the big cricket or football star. A lot of boys drop out to work on the farm when they're in high school. And so boys' education isn't the greatest either. And in fact, later in high school, it might be that girls are 50-50 because girls have dropped out for marriage and boys have dropped out for working on the farm and supporting a family. So there's definitely room for a massive boys empowerment project too. But I'm less familiar with how boys would answer that question, but the ones I've asked would say kind of typical boy things, but they don't tend to have great dreams either, because in the villages, they haven't seen a lot of their families get into those kind of careers.
So you mentioned that you guys don't run a school, that you work within the public school system. And, we're interested in hearing a bit about the public schools in Bangladesh. I mean, what are they like? What's the quality like?
It looks like Troy might be frozen again. No, I think he's back now. Did you hear that question, Troy, about the public schools in Bangladesh?
I didn't hear that question.
Yeah.
Just asking about the quality of the public school system in Bangladesh. What is it like?
Yeah, it's a great spectrum, probably similar to the US, I think where most of the listeners here are from. There's a great spectrum. So in Dhaka, there might be some elite kind of public schools that are better, and even in the city here. And then the typical ones in the villages, some of them barely have electricity to provide funding as schools, but they're not great. What we want girls to go to the local schools, so the schools continue to exist, and we provide the resources that they can go to school, their textbooks, all their school fees, tutoring, and the things that they need. But the schools are kind of hit and miss. If I had billions of dollars, we would like talk to the Minister of Education and say, let's rebuild like 5,000 schools too. But really, the main obstacle is not that schools don't exist or that they're not decent quality. The main obstacle is that girls will not even be in the schools after a certain age.
Right.
The main obstacle is not that there's not a nursing school or a college. The main obstacle is they don't have money to live in a dorm, so room and board, even though school is safe, very simple finances. To room is the main obstacle, which is in a nursing school, we get to go to nursing.
Now, speaking of going to school, you mentioned before, when you first came on to me that that school hasn't been taking place since last March because of COVID. Can you tell everyone a bit more about that and how it's impacting your program?
It looks like Troy's frozen, so I'll share a little bit until hopefully he comes back again. But yes, the schools have been closed ever since March. We're hoping, it's looking like they're going to reopen here this month, later this month of February, which will be fantastic. And we have learning centers in all 30 of our villages where typically the girls in the GEP, the Girls Education Program, can come together and receive tutoring and help with their homework and work together. But even during the time of COVID, we're not allowed to congregate, in the learning centers in the village. So what we've had to do is all of our local Bangladeshi staff, we have 27, I think 28 local Bangladeshi staff who work with our program. And then we also have dozens more part-time tutors. So in small groups, those tutors and staff members are working with the GEP girls and helping to continue to educate them. Basically, that the schools have been closed, but the schools have sent out books and materials, and our staff then are working with the girls in the program and helping them to continue making academic progress, even though schools are closed down.
Great, thank you. There was also a question about, we're at Dining for Women, we have funded a project with UNICEF for Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. And are you able to reach the needs of any of the Rohingya refugees that are in the country?
Yeah, I'll take that. I'm back. So the Rohingya population lives in the southeast of the country, and we're in the southwest corner. So Bangladesh is not a huge country. It's Iowa, but it's on the corner of the country. So connected with the Rohingya issue. There's some restrictions on which NGOs or organizations can even enter the Rohingya refugee camp areas, but it's possible in the future we'd be able to do something down the line. I'd imagine we expanded to that part.
Okay, David.
Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
You're up, David. I'm going to go on to the next question.
Sure.
Can you tell us about the caste system and whether that influences the girls' job potential and even, your work with what you're doing?
Yeah. Troy, did you hear that question? Are you back again? Do you want to respond to the issue of how the caste system impacts our work there in Bangladesh?
Sure. So Bangladesh is 91% Muslim. So the caste system is a reality in the Hindu community. Even though it's illegal, it's still in India and in Bangladesh, it still has a tremendous impact. So our program is probably about 50% Hindu, 50% Muslim, because we're right up against the Western Bangladesh border. So yes, the Hindu, probably 95% of them are descendants of the untouchable caste. So even though it's illegal, almost every one of those families, their last name is Dash, D-A-S, pronounced Dash. So even though it's illegal, people know from the last name that they are descendants of the untouchable caste system. So there still is some care against those families. Many of the families.
So many of those, I'll just.
Independence of the.
Oh, Troy's back. And now he's not back. So many of the hundreds of Hindu girls in our program who are descendants of the untouchables, they will face some level of additional challenge or potential discrimination as a result.
Yeah, the good, even the hospital where our young women go to nursing school, now about 10 of those nurses have the last name Dash. So we kind of joke and say one day the doctor is going to wake up and go like, every nurse in the city is Dash. And we're going to like have changed that. The girls will have kind of changed the perception of the last name by so many of them reaching these professional positions. But the other reality is that I tried to say this before I was cut off, is that the Hindus in Bangladesh, many of them are descendants of landless peasants who were unable to move back to India during partition. So they themselves are 3 or 4 generations of landless farm workers. So they not only are poor, landless, so they're vulnerable to all the seasonal variations of labor and being exploited for their labor. So yeah, the untouchable descendants have a lot of problems in Bangladesh, even though concept of untouchability is illegal in this region.
Right. Want to ask a question. You incorporate some menstrual hygiene into the program for the girls. And last month, our featured project was all about providing menstrual cups for women. Do you introduce menstrual cups at all into your girls?
It looks like Troy might be frozen, so I'll speak up. My understanding at present is that we don't have the menstrual cup program for the girls or young women in our program. We are in conversation with another organization that does provide that, and we're hoping to work in partnership with them and be able to provide that in the future. What we have done, oftentimes what hinders young women from attending school when they're menstruating is there isn't like bathroom facilities or anywhere for them to take care of that. So in all of our 30 villages where we have our learning centers where the girls come and receive tutoring, we prioritize having bathroom facilities there and having that as a resource so that the girls and young women are able to attend to that aspect of hygiene and be able to be at school or in the learning center. So I think in our program, that's the way we're handling that at present. And then we also have female staff, and Troy mentioned nurses who graduate from nursing school who are also female. So there's some women and some women with medical training who are able to interact with the girls and women in the program around issues of feminine hygiene.
So Beth Ellen is posing a question here. Do you have much opportunity to learn about innovations happening in other countries and to share your program with other professionals? As you were talking and saying that you're working to maybe connect with someone for a menstrual cup program, we're thinking, well, gee, maybe we could connect you with the Barca Foundation that we in Burkina Faso. I mean, completely different country, but they've got lots of partners as well. Do you have that opportunity to sort of hear about what's happening in other countries?
Troy, I'm not sure if you heard that question. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had one organization, one Days for Girls International, and one other one that was based in the US that sent us some basically like reusable hygiene kits. And forgive me, that's not like my main area of expertise. And even when I handle these things in Bangladesh, it's so sensitive culturally that I kind of talk even in euphemism and just kind of hand stuff to my female staff and say, do your thing, because even my staff can't talk to me about these issues, even like adult women. So we donation of some supplies from organizations in the US, like a big partnership. The way we handle things here, staff kind of has budget that, and just for everyone's
Sounds like we losing Troy again. Sorry, our apologies, everyone. It's hard to come in all the way from the other side of the world. Yeah.
I guess this topic kind of brings us to I've had several people ask this now. How did the two of you get involved in this project and speak up for the poor?
Yeah. You want to go first, Troy, with your story?
Yeah, so I founded the organization basically because I wanted to do something as a lawyer on these issues. And in brief, I grew up in different countries. My parents were teachers at international schools, so I had a heart for international issues growing up. Kind of before and then during law school, I worked with organizations that were helping remove girl brothels, anti-trafficking issues, and forced profit. And I spent a lot of time for 3 or 4 summers and kind of around law school with doing basically undercover work, kind of like as an undercover sex tourist, trying to go into brothels, helping.
This sounds like Troy's frozen up again. Yeah, so he's describing, he did spend several years working to address directly the problem of human trafficking and getting girls and young women out of brothels. And if Troy comes back, I'll let him keep going with his own story. But I know that after a time of doing that, Troy realized that actually prevention is such an important aspect of this. Not just, you can remove a girl or a young woman from a brothel and they'll find somebody else to bring in and take their place. And so how do you build a community in which girls are educated and empowered and they're not vulnerable to being taken into the brothels? And so I think for Troy and his experience, that was what brought him to Bangladesh. He had some connections to other organizations that were working in that region of the world. And he visited and realized that the Khulna district right there near the border of India in southwest Bangladesh, a very poor region, the rate of child marriage is very high, but there's also an issue of trafficking girls and young women across the border into India. And that part of the country and of the world would be an ideal place to initiate this girls' education program that would be an aspect of prevention of girls ending up in these problems versus just the issue of removal of those who are in the brothel. Troy, I kind of finished your story a little bit.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, thanks. So Dave knows what it's all about, but yeah, our main focus here is preventing terrible things from happening. Although there's still the lawyer part of me, we do some of the work on prosecutions and things when terrible things do happen. And we're hoping to expand that and even help bring some girls who've been trafficked. But we're mostly working for the reasons Dave mentioned, that I think it's better to avoid the happening than having to remove girls after the fact.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm going to ask one more question, and we'll wrap up our Q&A. Troy, do you have a story that you could share about a girl that you came to know that did progress to become a teacher or a nurse or a doctor?
Oh gosh, it looks like Troy might be frozen again. I'll just chime in until Troy comes back, but oh, maybe he's back already. Are you there, Troy? Can you hear it? Did you hear the question?
I did not hear that question.
To share a story of a girl who did progress and become a teacher or a nurse or a police officer, or someone that you saw, sort of a success story, I guess.
Yeah. So one of the greatest is my friend Shipra, who just took her nursing exams to try to get a job at a government nursing school. She just took her exams last week. So she's 22 now, was married about a year and a half ago. She was the first young woman that I was kind of the uncle that kind of helped give her.
Okay, we can wait a second. Still there? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. I think my connection just can't handle the bandwidth of this, but basically this girl Shipra I met when she's about 14. She had no father. Her very poor mother probably would have had her married off when she was 16 or 17, but we helped her through nursing school. And she was the first young woman that I was kind of like the uncle to help give her away because she had no father. And it's so now she kind of brings me dinner every once in a while and kind of thanks. I say, you don't need to keep bringing me, but she's like, oh, uncle, thank you, thank you. So that's a really great story because she likely would have been married at age 16 to a very poor man, but now she's married to a guy who has kind of a lower management level job at another NGO, but together they're making a living, and she's a married young woman, a perfect example of what we want to produce, a young woman who has a good job, and she'll do some of the health and safety training. And when we send pictures back to whoever gets pictures and reports of our program, I'll make sure that someone sees a picture of Shipra herself giving a presentation. She herself in our program at 14, who now, and it's bringing it all full circle. And she because she's over 21, I can tell her story and use her real name, and she's very happy to have her story shared.
Wonderful. That's a great way to wrap up our Q&A. So back to you, Beth Ellen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. That was really wonderful to hear about that, Troy. Please don't worry about the in and out. We are patient with you and we understand.
Yeah, thanks for persisting. It's a little frustrating on this end, but yeah, it's great to have so many people that want to support us through your organization. And yeah, just to make a pitch to anyone who wants to support this grant, like give generously to your local chapter this month. And obviously anyone who wants to come visit one day, we'd love to have some of you come and represent your organization and come see, and you'll meet hundreds of girls and young women and see that your funds have been a big part of helping stuff advance. So thanks everyone.
Thank you so much. Okay, Wendy is going to quickly go over the sustained grantee, and I just want to encourage everyone, I'll put the link in there while she's talking, to go visit the page for our sustained grantee this month. Wendy, go ahead while I get this
Thanks,
link posted.
Thank you, Beth Ellen. Definitely check this out on our website. This month, our sustained grantee is the Catalyst Foundation. It is a health and hygiene program in Vietnam. We have been working with Catalyst since 2014 when we awarded their featured grant. And now for the last 3 years, they have been getting their $25,000 a year for their SUSTAIN grant. So this SUSTAIN grant focuses a lot on the needs of a particular community in Vietnam, the Raglai community, and I may not be pronouncing that right. And they're really trying to reduce poverty and reduce the risks, once again, of human trafficking that the young girls and women do face in the community. So this project is all about empowering women and girls, similar to the Speak Up for the Poor program, providing the families with daily access to safe water, proper sanitation, hygiene, reducing the incidence of preventable disease, and offering quality medical care, and providing hygiene and education. So we're doing some very practical things like installing a water filtration system, and excuse me, building a low-cost, high-quality toilet, bathroom, outhouse at each home in the community, and then doing education lessons. So it is a great program, as are all of our SUSTAIN grantees. Check it out on the website and read more about this organization. And I'm going to finish because I've got a scratchy throat.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. And please, again, I put the link in the chat, so follow that. I just want to remind everybody that February 16th and 17th in the evenings, both evenings, we have our monthly advocacy chapter with results webinars. So please participate in that. We have lots of exciting things that we're trying to do with results. On March 4th is our next National Virtual Chapter meeting. And please register for the February 6th event when we will roll out our new name. What did I say? February? March 6th. March 6th. I'm not ready for tomorrow or Saturday. March 6th, please join us. It's going to be really fun. We're going to have a lot of grantees there. And we will be celebrating International Women's Day at the same time. So please join us for that. It's going to be fabulous. And once again, I want to thank Troy and David. That was a wonderful presentation. We're so excited that we're funding your organization and supporting your efforts. And thank you so much for being here so early in the morning, Troy. And we'll look forward to hear more updates as you send in your reports.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. It's 9 o'clock, and we're gonna say good night.